Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, the Gurudev.
Hare Krishna. Is someone on the call? Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Manasi Ganga Mataji. Hare Krishna Rohini Dasi Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisance. All glories Srila Prabhupada ki jai Hum Mataji.
Hare Krishna, please accept mine too. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Nice to have you on the class every time. Really nice, beautiful.
Thank you.
How many are on the call? Just the three. Oh, Leela Mandri Mataji, I think, is on here too somewhere.
Yeah, I put the mute, Mataji, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Beautiful, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, my dear. Manasi Ganga was on here a minute ago, but I think she's not here anymore. Okay, then I don't know who else is going to get on. Just a minute. Give me 1 minute. Okay, I think I'll start with the prayers and then I can start reading. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam rupa kadamayam dadati svapadantikam vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya echa patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Narayanam Namaskritya, Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Devim Saraswatim Vyasam, Tatam Chayam Udirayat, Nashtakrayashu Abhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Uttama Shloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Okay, Matajis, we are in Canto 3. We're in the last chapter, chapter 33, the activities of Kapila. And today we're doing verses 13, 14, 15, 16. That's it. Okay, so is there anybody who has an urge to read? Who has a book? Okay, I guess I'll have to read then, if nobody is going to read. Sakapi Tana Yoktena Yoga Deshina Yoga Yuk Tasmin Ashrama Apide Sarasvatyaha Samahita. Translations and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
As in translation, as instructed by her son, Devahuti also began to practice bhakti yoga in that very ashram. She practiced samadhi in the house of Kardama Muni, which was so beautifully decorated with flowers that it was considered the flower crown of the river Saraswati. Purport. Devahuti did not leave her house because it is never recommended for a woman to leave her home. She is dependent. The very example of Devahuti was that when she was not married, she was under the care of her father, Swayambhuva Manu, and then Swayambhuva Manu gave her to Kardama Muni in charity. She was under the care of her husband in her youth, and then her son, Kapila Muni, was born. As soon as her son grew up, her husband left home. And similarly, the son, after discharging his duty towards his mother, also left. She could also have left home, but she did not. Rather, she remained at home and began to practice bhakti yoga as it was instructed by her great son, Kapila Muni. And because of her practice of bhakti yoga, the entire home became just like a flower crown on the river Saraswati. Wow. Okay, text 14. Abhikshin Navagaha Kapishan Jatilan Kutila Lalakan Atmanam Kogra Tapasa Vibrati Chirinam Krishnam. Translation. She began to bathe 3 times daily, and thus her curling black hair gradually became gray. Due to austerity, her body gradually became thin, and she wore old garments. Purport. It is the practice of the yogi, brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyasi to bathe at least 3 times daily, early in the morning, during noontime, and in the evening. These principles are strictly followed even by some grihastas, especially brahmanas, who are elevated in spiritual consciousness. Devahuti was a king's daughter and almost a king's wife also. Although Kardama Muni was not a king, by his yogic mystic power, he accommodated Devahuti very comfortably in a nice palace with maidservants and all opulence. But since she had learned austerity, even in the presence of her husband, there was no difficulty for her to be austere. Still, because her body underwent severe austerity after the departure of her husband and son, she became thin. To be too fat is not very good for spiritually advanced life. Rather, one should reduce, because if one becomes fat, it is an impediment to progress in spiritual understanding. One should be careful not to eat too much, sleep too much, or remain in a comfortable position. Voluntarily accepting some penances and difficulties, one should take less food and less sleep. These are the procedures for practicing any kind of yoga, whether bhakti yoga, Gnan yoga, or hatha yoga. Did anybody else join who would care to read at this point?
Yeah, I can read, Mataji.
Oh, very nice. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Prajapate karadamasya tapoyoga vijribitam swagarhasthyam anaupamyam prarthyam vaimانikair api. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The home and household paraphernalia of Kardama, who was one of the Prajapatis, was developed in such a way by the dint of his mystic powers of austerity and yoga that his opulence was sometimes envied by those who travel in the outer space in airplanes. Purport. The statement in this verse that Kardam Muni's household affairs were envied even by persons who travel in outer space refers to the denizens of heaven. Their airships are not like those we have invented in modern age, which fly only from one country to another. Their airplanes were capable of going from one planet to another. There are many such statements in Srimad Bhagavatam from which we can understand that there were facilities to travel from one planet to another, especially in the higher planetary system, and who can say that they are not still traveling? The speed of our airplanes and space vehicles is very limited. But as we have already studied, Kardam Muni traveled in outer space in an airplane, which was like a city, and he journeyed to see all different heavenly planets. This was not an ordinary plane, nor was it ordinary space travel. Because Kardam Muni was such a powerful mystic yogi, his opulence was envied by the denizens of heaven.
Thank you. Would you care to do 16? He has no purport. You could just
Okay,
read
sure.
16.
Papyabhena nibhasaya dantarukma parichada asanani cha haimani sushparsastaranani cha. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The opulence of the household of Kardam Muni is described herein. The bed sheets and mattresses were all as white as the foam of milk. The chairs and benches were made of ivory and were covered by cloths of lace with golden filigree. And the couches were made of gold and had soft pillows. Didn't we read something this last time?
No, Mataji.
Something
And,
like this was there.
we ended with verse 12, I'm sure.
Because I am remembering this bed sheets were soft and golden filigree.
Okay, but let me go back and look online. It'll take 1 second. I'm sure that these are the verses for today. Hold on one moment.
Mataji, I was there also yesterday, and it actually, we didn't read this. Maybe you're remembering from when we read all the verses together.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Very nice. Thank you, Mataji. Okay. So today in text 13, we're learning that Devahuti began to practice bhakti yoga in this very ashram of Grihastha life. And she practiced samadhi in Kardama Muni's home. And gosh, I was just thinking of this. It was so beautifully decorated with flowers. It was considered the flower crown of the river Sarasvati. I was just thinking of how we have even some beautiful funeral parlors here in America. They're just full of flowers. I was just thinking like that when I was reading this. Now, in these verses, and I'll probably need some help from the Indian women because you are the ones who've grown up in India. And it is Devahuti, first of all, she didn't leave her house, okay? And she was dependent. This is something that goes on in Vedic society. So when she wasn't married, she stayed with her father, and her father was Swayambhuva Manu, and then he gave her to Kardama Muni. And it's interesting. So the woman should never be left on her own, okay? That is the Vedic system. So first she's with the father, then she went under the care of her husband, and then finally Kapila, her son Kapila was born, and her son, after he discharged his duty towards his mother, he also left. But she never, she could have gone, but she didn't, okay? She started to practice bhakti yoga, and this was because her son instructed her to do so. And we learned that Kapila, Dave, was an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Kapila was very powerful. And he instructed his mother to practice this bhakti yoga, and she started to do it, and everything in the house became, like a flower garden, okay, on the Sarasvati River. Now, I looked up. It turns out that Kardama Muni, her husband, this was during Satya Yuga. So it's very interesting. In Satya Yuga, they were very spiritually advanced at that time. This was just after the creation of the universe that this occurred. Okay, and it goes on like just ahead to talk about what the house looks like, et cetera, et cetera. And it was very common in Vedic times, and especially during Satya Yuga, to decorate the home very, very beautifully, and for the husband to provide beautiful a beautiful place for his wife to live. And it was discussed also that Kardama Muni, he was not really, he was very detached from the material world right from the get-go. And he got married because Krishna instructed him to do so. Okay, Krishna wanted him to get married, and so his whole life, the children that he had, he wanted to bring them up in the Krishna conscious way, so that they would all become liberated. Okay, so it was not for sense gratification or to have unbridled sex life, not at all. He followed the Vedic instructions for having children. And if I'm not mistaken, she had 9 daughters, something like that, before she ended up having the one son, Lord Kapila. And we know he was completely liberated right from the beginning. And so I just wanted to look that up for myself again, the background here. Once again, they were talking a lot in here about mystic yoga. And of course, Kardama Muni was a mystic yogi. And in that time period, the recommended practice was meditation. Okay, that was the way to reach the Lord in that particular yuga. And so it was not unusual to have read this, that, oh, wait a minute, the father was, he was a mystic yogi. Let me just stop there for right now. And okay, so in text 14, so she starts to practice in a very, very austere fashion, the mother, Devahuti. And I know I would probably be the same way if everybody had left the house. My father, and then my husband, and then my son. She took very seriously to Krishna consciousness because of her son, Kapila Dev. So she started bathing 3 times a day, and she, over the years, her curly black hair started to turn gray, and she performed many austerities, and she started to become very, very thin, and she was wearing old garments. So now I know my Guru Maharaj says that in this particular, I don't know about this yuga, but he recommends to us that we bathe at least once a day. Okay. But here it says in the practice of the yogi, either brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyasi, they bathe at least 3 times a day. I'm not sure if that's still the practice, because like I said, my guru was saying we have to at least bathe once a day, but that doesn't mean that we don't bathe more. I mean, if we have particular services we're performing, we have deities, etc., we should bathe more, but at least once a day. And these are strictly followed, these principles, even by some grihastas, okay? Grihastas who are brahmanas, who are super elevated in spiritual consciousness. Now, Devahuti, as it says here, she was a king's daughter and almost a king's wife. And Kardama Muni, there it is, he was not a king, but by his yogic mystic power, he accommodated Devahuti very comfortably. So they were living in a palace, they had maid servants, and I would imagine it being very opulent in that particular yuga. I could just picture it. I mean, this was the beginning of creation, and this is before, things became very degraded. And she she performed, Devahuti was performing all her austerities even in the presence of her husband, okay? And she started to get very, very thin after the departure of her husband and her son. And, you know, she started wearing old clothes. She didn't look very good. And it's interesting. I would think this is true, but I never saw it written like this before. We know that we're not supposed to eat too much, sleep too much, or remain in a comfortable position. But here it's saying that we should be careful and actually watch our weight so that we don't become too fat. They say it is considered an impediment to progress in spiritual understanding. And I can understand that. You know, my weight has fluctuated up and down over the years. And I know that when I have gained a lot of weight, I'm not very clear. My thinking is not clear. It's almost like food can numb you. And so I can see where you would not, it would be an impediment to progress in spiritual understanding if you're too big. I mean, we're talking, I don't know what that means, but something that's, you know, outside of an acceptable normal weight, I would think. So we should perform austerities and accept that in this particular life, we're going to have to undergo difficulties, and we're going to have to make penance. You know, we're going to have to overcome our anartas and work on those things. And while doing so, take less food and less sleep. So, and here it's mentioned by Srila Prabhupada, that's the procedure for any kind of yoga that's practiced, whether it's bhakti, gyan, or hatha yoga, because of I would say, the clarity of the understanding would be, yeah, it gets kind of cloudy. And certainly, even with the Gyan yoga, you can't think properly when you're eating like that. And when you're in particular positions, yogic positions with the Hatha yoga, if your body is too big, it's very, very hard to get into those postures. I think it's very difficult. So it makes perfect sense that one should not become fat in practicing Krishna consciousness or any kind of yoga practice. Now in 15, this I thought was very interesting. People who would envy actually all of the home and the paraphernalia of Kardama Muni. Now, I don't know exactly where the house was situated, but yeah, because he was such a great mystic yogi, and because of all his powers, his austerity, etc., and his opulence, others within the now this is within in the heavens. This is not in the spiritual world, but this is within the cosmic creation, but in the higher planetary systems in the heavens. He was envied by those who travel in outer space in airplanes. It's very interesting that it's mentioned here so many times. Prabhupada is telling us that, you know, these are airships that don't just travel from one country to another. No, these planes can go from, you know, one galaxy to another completely different universe, different solar systems, etc. And what did they look like? They were huge. And I'm telling you, I have seen many, many documentaries. Presently, they just pop up, they pop up on Facebook and things. And they mention that there are motherships sitting out in outer space that have been seen by our international, what is it called? International spacecraft that we have, the international telescope that we have out there. I don't know how far from the Earth it's located, but out there they can see because it's pitch black. And they have seen motherships that are absolutely colossal. They're as big as cities. I mean, huge. So imagine these spaceships were there. This is back in Satyayuga. So this space travel is not uncommon. It's been going on since the Lord created the universe. And we just can't see it, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. And Prabhupada has mentioned that so many times that even on different planets, and the moon, etc., and even in the sun, there are so many living entities. But even if we can't see them, they seem to be too small for us to see, or our eyes just cannot see those entities. Now, there are people in the world today who claim to have seen many of those entities and have traveled to different places. And so I totally believe it. I believe it can you imagine the age of this book, the original age, and that this was being discussed? There are those who travel in outer space in airplanes, and like it says here, they are the size of cities. And it says here, it was not an ordinary airplane. It wasn't an ordinary space travel. Okay. And so, but there were those who were traveling around, and we know Narada Muni travels out in outer space. And now we have Kardama Muni, who also travels in outer space. And he was such a great, powerful mystic yogi that many in the heavens envied him. And don't forget that in the heavenly planets, there's so much more envy because there's so much more opulence too in the heavenly realm. And we're not, like I said, we're not talking about the spiritual world. We're talking about within the cosmic manifestation. I could see where these space travelers could envy others who seem to have more. And that is considered, our guru was saying that today, it's one of the hardest things to get rid of when you discuss pride, okay? The hardest thing to get rid of is wealth. If you are very, very wealthy and you have a lot of opulence, it's very, very difficult within the material existence to get rid of that level of pride. There are all kinds of levels of pride, but I would think in the heavenly realm, you're talking about an inordinate amount of pride, just everywhere because of all of the opulence. Oh, my planet is so beautiful, and milk and honey flow in the rivers, and the flowers are just everywhere. This to me, I believe, it almost it almost sounds like heaven, even though this was not where the pastime took place with Devahuti and her son, and Kardama Muni. I'm not sure where Kardama Muni took her. He used to travel with Devahuti all over the planets, and she used to enjoy with him, like sense gratification. She used to enjoy a lot with her husband, and he was just basically married because Krishna wanted to produce offspring. I don't know if he wanted to, or if Krishna, I think it was Krishna who wanted him to get married, but Kardama Muni was to beget many children, and that's one of the reasons why he got married. But Devahuti used to enjoy quite a bit. So imagine she now is being instructed by her son, Kapila, to take to Krishna consciousness and what it can do for her, etc. We've been hearing about it quite a bit in here, in this particular canto. And so she takes to it, and wow, I think it might have been very difficult for her when everybody left home, because that's when she became very, very thin. But she accepted it, you know. Anyway, that's 15, and then of course in 16, the opulence of Kardama Muni's household is, they're beginning to describe what it's like, how beautiful it was. You know, the bed sheets and mattresses were all white as the foam of milk. The chairs and benches were made of ivory and were covered by cloths of lace and with golden filigree, and the couches were made of gold and had very soft pillows. So that's where I'm thinking of opulence here. It's unbelievable. Doesn't even sound like it's coming from the earthly planet or the earthly realm. It sounds like it's coming from heaven. Now I don't know, maybe I'm not sure where this particular castle was that he put her in, this palace, if it was located above the earth or if it was actually on the earth. Maybe somebody has more information than I do. But that's all I really have today for these verses. I'd love to hear you share, comment, question, correct, anything would be acceptable and desired. Thank you.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji, very nice class. Thank you so much. What I had heard about Devahuti was that when she was married, she performed a lot of austerity and she served her husband so well that he became very pleased with her. And he understood that, oh, here is a princess who is like born and brought up in so much opulence, and she has left everything for me. She's serving me so dedicatedly, and she became so thin by serving him. So then he looked at her and like he felt a little pity, and then he created this airplane in which it was an traveling airplane, but it could accommodate a whole city in it. And then he like kept his wife in opulence and asked her what does she desire, and then that's when she said that she wants children, and so on, and then the story goes on.
Oh yeah, you know, that's another thing. You're right. I read another thing that said with this bathing, you know, she started to look really like thin and kind of haggard after a while. And her husband, just to please her, he put her in I guess it was like a bath, like a river, in a river, and he gave her all of these maidservants all around her to take care of her so that she would start to look beautiful again. And they gave her, they would bathe her, put all these special lotions, do her hair, and they would give her all this, these foodstuffs, and to beautify her, basically, and, and to please her. So that, yes, that is another aspect. And yeah, he used to travel with her all over the place. But yeah, you're right. He became pleased with her, and she did want to have children. Yes, that is it. What a story. Does anybody know exactly where these palaces were located? This palace that he put her in? It just feels like they're in heaven with this opulence. But then again, like I said, we're in Satya Yuga, where I think at that point, the earth was not so degraded at that point. It was, people were very, very spiritual, and they could, I think, was it Kardama Muni had meditated for 10,000 years, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, does anybody else care to comment, make any comment of any kind? Okay, well then I guess that's all I have for today. I'm sorry it couldn't be longer, but I was, we're supposed to be giving a little extra time for people to make comments. I was giving too many verses, and I think people were, not having enough time to make a comment. So that's all I have. If there are no further comments, we'll end for today. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Thank you very much.